The information shared in this episode is not intended to serve as a substitute for mental health services and is only intended to provide education and information to you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Honeybee Podcast. I received a message from a listener who has a concern about their daughter's change in behavior at school, at home, and online. This parent is especially concerned about their child being targeted for commercial sexual exploitation, also known as human trafficking. So I have invited Karen Diers to the show so she can provide information, wisdom, and guidance to us all. Before we get into it, here is a little bit of info about Karen. Karen Diers is the City Director for Refuge for Women in Las Vegas, Nevada. She has been serving in this role since December 2014. In November 2015, Karen assisted her team, board of directors, volunteers, community businesses, and organizations in opening Las Vegas's first safe house, Refuge for Women. Refuge for Women seeks to offer help, healing, and restoration to the victims of sexual exploitation and human trafficking. Karen is passionate about helping women reach their potential. Without further ado, here is the letter that I received from Panicked Parent. Dear Honeybee, my 14-year-old daughter has been acting out at school, being disrespectful to her teachers, refusing to do homework, and being a smart aleck around the house. I received a call from the school and had been informed that the hall monitors found her with other kids smoking weed behind a portable at school. As a punishment, I decided to strip her room of anything that she would find entertaining. I went on her laptop and I found out that my daughter has been communicating with a 24-year-old guy over social media. He has promised to give her jewelry and other gifts if she decides to run away from home to live with him. This breaks my heart, to say the least, but I found out that she has sent him nudes in addition to everything else. He is trying to convince her to do online work, and he is telling her that she could make a ton of money with just her photos alone. My daughter has fallen for what he has told her. She tells him on one hand that she is scared to leave our home. In other situations, she tells him that she's tired of my rules, tired of going to school, and that she wants to make money just by being beautiful. I'm really worried about my daughter, and I don't know what I can do to keep her safe from danger. Signed, Panicked Parent. To help with getting this very concerning issue figured out, I have with me Karen Diers. Karen, did you have a chance to hear the letter that I received from Panicked Parent?
Yes, I did.
Thank you so much, Karen, by the way, for being on the show today. I had to involve you in problem solving this matter because I am certain that other parents may have experienced something similar. And while I know that this situation has a tremendous amount of red flags and there's so many different ways to approach this problem, I wanted to get you involved in the conversation. What do you think is going on here?
Well, he's actually a pimp. He's a trafficker. He's involved in the crime of human trafficking. It has every telltale sign. And, I'm going to throw some statistics at you first.
Okay.
That might be shocking, but this is exactly what's happening is he's pimping her out. He's trying to, let me back up. He's trying to trap her with fraud and coercion and false promises and false claims to kind of boyfriend her, lure her in, and then he wants to pimp her out. That is exactly what is happening. But listen to this. 90% of minor victims are under the control of a pimp. So if you have a victim of human trafficking, 90% of them are actually under the control of a pimp. And 13 years of age, actually 12 to 14 years is the average age a child is first exploited through prostitution. And she comes from vulnerable situations. And when you talk about exploited children, I mean, we know statistically from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Vena, that at least 100,000 U.S. children are exploited in prostitution every year in America. So teen sex trafficking is real. It's scary. It has devastating physical and mental health consequences for the youth. So this mother is afraid for a very, very good reason. She will lose her daughter to who knows what if she doesn't get involved in her daughter's life. Now, what can be done? There's a lot of things that can be done, but you have to kind of know a bit of the background of why this is happening, how she got into it. And unless you have a more pointed question, I can continue to talk about the pimp is a predator. They are trained to look for vulnerabilities. They are trained to seek the internet for pictures. They're trained to find a contact of a young girl in a mall, in a high school, on the media, social media. He is trained to look for specific things. That's why this thing just rings off all sorts of alarms, is he has found her and he is making arrangements. He will boyfriend her out. That's the term we use because he's going to feel like he is. She's going to feel like he loves her and she's so special and she's so beautiful. And she can come from a strong home and still be lured in by that, but she's not putting, nets in place to keep her from being caught. And what's happening is he will get her to run away. And in fact, statistically, when you're looking at children that run away within 48 hours.
Definitely. I've picked up the cue just by what you had said, that being a runaway is a vulnerability that a child would have for being sexually exploited. Can you tell our listeners additional vulnerabilities for a child to be in a sexually exploitive relationship with a pimp or what have you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll pick on that one first, the runaways, and we'll get that out of the way. When you're a runaway or maybe you're thrown out of the house, let's say the parent says, enough of this, we can't put up with this anymore, and you just have to leave. And a lot of parents face that dilemma, what to do when they have an uncontrollable teen like that. And so the teen either runs away on their own or they get kicked out. Anyway, they're from a situation at home that isn't good. And it's common for teens who've run away to actually trade sex, because they need basic survival needs. And that's why it happens within 48 hours. They're hungry, they need food, they need clothing, they need a place to stay. And pimps and traffickers are looking for that. They know the signs, the physical signs of when a girl is vulnerable like that. And they will drive right up to her and lure her in and make promises. They'll do it all sorts of ways, but that happens. They can literally kidnap her and take her in the car and take her across the state or across the country and start selling her for sex. But he does it in a way that he lures her in, first of all. So that's kind of the runaway scenario. Teens that have a history of child abuse, according to statistics, a majority of the teen underage trafficking victims have a history of sexual abuse. And why do they go together? Because they're vulnerable. That's something that's never been worked through. They feel abused and unloved and lonely. And that very key component of security and a voice and protection has been stripped from them. So they begin to look for that. And a pimp or a trafficker will offer that very quickly to that vulnerable child or teen. Some come from foster care and group homes. That's another vulnerability, because foster care and group homes can be, not always, but can be places of victimization, because perhaps maybe they're not being looked after, they're not being kept safe, and then they begin to crave attention from a pimp. And that pimp and trafficker very quickly will provide that false sense of safety and security. And then the victim, the child, the teen, begins to rely upon that pimp for those very basic needs and for the ability to survive. Another thing is gang membership. And even boys, it's not just girls that are subject to pimping out, but boys can be as well. But if you join a gang for means of income or security or peer pressure, very quickly that can turn bad when the gang says, okay, we're going to sell you over now. And some girls are told they need to sell their bodies as part of the gang initiation or for membership or for protection. So you can see how it spirals very quickly when that girl gets out of the safety of a family that's loving and meeting their needs. But the other one I wanted to say was even just the juvenile justice system involvement, and youths and teens that have been arrested or are currently on probation, they're at a high risk for trafficking as well. So because they're commonly arrested for loitering, curfew, runaway, minors in possession of drugs and alcohol, it makes them vulnerable as well. So there's just a very long answer to your question, but there's a lot of things that make a person, a child or a teen, vulnerable to human trafficking or to be picked up by a pimp.
And so what are some of the common recruitment tactics? So I heard you mention, as we know, panicked parent, she found out that her daughter is having conversations with a grown man, okay, through social media. And then we also know that when a child is on runaway after those 48 hours or within those 48 hours, you know, you're tired, you're hungry, you probably need to change clothes, all of these other areas. Runaway, hey, you want to come to my house? It's safe, it's warm. That's one recruitment. Social media. What other recruitment tactics are you aware of, Karen?
Anything that they can target, trick, and traumatize.
Target, trick, or traumatize. Okay.
Yes. The pimp seeks to target a person first. They're shopping. They're literally shopping online. They're shopping in malls. So they're at bus stops. The scary thing is they're in schools and they're training up young boys. There's big cash, big money in this. And after school programs, I mentioned foster homes, parks. Scares me when I see teens hanging out at parks, especially young girls.
Wow.
First thing I'm thinking of is, what are you looking for? And who called you and said they were setting up this meeting with you? And what are you expecting to find? And other places where teens gather, they have to be so careful. Bus stations, bus stops. But then pimps want to, after they target them, let's say they target a girl, they'll trick her into spending a lot of time with him. Okay, so there's the come run away with me. There's the let me take you shopping. You look beautiful, baby, today. But I tell you what, I know a place where we can get your nails done. Well, she's all over that. So you know, and so what's happening is he is tricking her to form a bond with him. And it's very calculating to a scary element here as I talk about it. Just shocks me even as I hear myself talk about it, that they would actually trick a young girl by buying her gifts, providing a place to stay, giving her affection. But see, what happens, Vena, is he's working up to something. He's working up to revealing to her at some point his intent to sexually exploit her. Why does she fall for this? He's groomed her. If she is a runaway, if she is in a lot of trouble, or if she's just vulnerable and scared and now she doesn't know how to get out, she's a teenager. Again, 12 to 14 is the average age a girl goes into the sex industry. And so let's say he's tricking her now. You know, you can have sex with me, but I want you to now have sex with my boyfriend. And she's thinking, well, okay, but, after that, now I want you to go out and listen, we got to pay some bills here. I've been paying for some expensive jeans and purses and, I got rent to pay, and she's feeling kind of bad at this point that maybe she's been loafing, taken from him. And so she's thinking, well, how bad could it be? So he sells her out. Next thing you know, she gets beaten if she doesn't bring back her quota. And now she's under not just a pimp, a gorilla pimp. And the gorilla pimp will beat her, maim her, brand her. And as I talk, it all sounds very super dramatic, but I will guarantee you, because of the work I'm in and because of the women that are in our home, and we only have 6 beds, so we're hearing, 6 stories? There are thousands out there who have gone from their teenage years to their adult years, and they're still being trafficked. And then traumatized, that's that third T. We have targeted, we have tricked, now we have traumatized. What happens to that young girl is she is feeling trapped. She's feeling powerless. And much like when she was a child and abused sexually, perhaps, she's lost her voice, she's lost power, and she's lost any type of control over the situation, because guess what? He's now making claims. I will beat you. I will burn that brand off your body. And that happens. I will kill you. I'll go after your parents. I know where your grandma lives. I spent Thanksgiving with your family. I know where they are. And if you're not going to help me, then I'm not going to help you, and I'm going to hurt you. And the fear, the fraud, force, and coercion definition of human trafficking is at play here. She's been told a lie, and now she's forced from fear and coercion that if you leave, you're in big trouble, and those you love are in trouble. And if you have a baby through the pimp, good luck, because he's now going to take that. Parents need to be aware that when they have a situation like is in that letter, what is happening is that girl has made herself vulnerable. She's gotten herself into social media traps. And there are things, if you want to talk about that next, there are things that teens need to do and not do with their social media to keep from being found out by a pimp who's on the prowl.
I definitely want to get into that. And during your response, you have said things, it's not dramatic at all. I am noticing that I feel anxious, that I feel a sense of terror for these girls because the access is so much different than what it had been maybe like 20 years ago, 10 years ago. All of these different ways to get connected to a young girl and misrepresent yourself, because I could be anybody behind a screen. Now, you mentioned something to me that I really want listeners to get more information on, and also me. Boyfriend her. This guy can be grooming other young men to get connected to an adolescent so she can be groomed and be placed out there for trafficking. So can you talk a little bit about what this looks like in the school environment, Karen, if you can, where a young boy is going after a young girl to get her connected to this lifestyle?
Yeah, so boys will groom other boys, and there's things that need to happen in the school to protect yourself and others, because it happens in high school. That's what we're talking about. So first of all, like, suppose you have a friend. You're in high school, you're 11th grade, you have a friend, and you're starting to notice some things, or your other friends are starting to notice some things about this girl, this friend of yours, okay? So here are some warning signs that might give you a clue that you need to get somebody involved in this situation, that this is a situation of trafficking going on or being groomed for trafficking. So some of those things are, she's dating an older guy, okay? In fact, the guy might even give you the creeps. There's something about him in your gut that's funny, and he's older, like in that letter that you just read me. Let's say she's very protective and secretive. She doesn't want you to read the text. She doesn't want you to know about him, but you know that he's there. He's in her life. And she starts showing up with unexplained cash, lots of it. She starts showing up with clothes and stuff that you know she can't afford. Let's say she suddenly has a second cell phone. Well, that's kind of odd. I mean, unless you're working a job where you have a job phone, but that's not in high school.
Not at all.
You know? And if she has a second cell phone, that's his phone. And that's the one that she'll call him on. There's weird tattoos. Branding is what we call when a pimp wants to brand his girls. Pimps like to brand their victims. And oftentimes a woman will get a brand because it shows that she belongs to him. They're very private about who they own and who's working for them. And they want that girl branded. And we had a gal that graduated from her home that came in with a fresh tattoo of her pimp's brand across her chest. And she had to wake up every morning and look at that. So we worked to get that removed. So we're talking about weird tattoos showing up, other things, cuts and bruises that you look at and you go, I wonder where you got that. Or how come you have those bruises down your arm? Well, she's probably been in a situation where it's violent and the sex has been more of a rape. She's got extra hotel room keys in her purse. This is interesting because this means she's being picked up and taken to a place where she will have that sex with that John, and then the money then goes to the pimp. But she'll have maybe another set of room keys, hotel keys in her purse. Or maybe she's missing a lot of school. She's dropping out of school. Emotionally, she's depressed. She's nervous, tense, or afraid. And then you kind of get the feeling like things just aren't the same with this person. You're not even sure if they're telling you the truth. You know, acts like she's maybe even brainwashed. There's just something weird about it. And I tell you, when this happens, and you got to tell somebody, when you see this happen in somebody in high school, you don't try to handle the problem yourself, because your friend and even you could be in big danger at this point. You know, if you see something, say something, but go to the right source. Go to the school counselor, a trusted parent, another trusted adult, somebody in the local church you attend, somebody that can help you get in contact with the human trafficking hotline, perhaps, for some extra help.
And I will be sure to put that information for the human trafficking hotline into the show notes. So I have two questions, and maybe I'll have even more. The first question, I do want you to circle back and tell teenagers how they can have an extra layer of protection while they're on social media. And then the additional question I have for you is, what are some strategies that parents can use to protect their child from being entangled in this sort of lifestyle?
Okay, so teens need to be aware that they can be recruited during school, after school, online, weekends, in the morning before school, basically any time. That's when it happens. And I mean, school seems like an odd place, but it's happening. Malls kind of explains itself. I think if you're hanging out at a mall and you get approached by a young guy that starts to kind of love bomb you with some real, nice talk, you got to have your warning signs in place. You got to know what to look for. So when does it happen? It happens during those times and in those places. So they need to be aware when they're at the bus stops, at school functions, and at the shopping mall that they could be recruited and they could be being watched. It's very deceptive. They'll try to gain a teen's trust online first before meeting in person. A pimp will, find a girl on one of her Facebook. Never say, I feel like I want to run away from home. I mean, Facebook is where everybody dumps all their emotions anyway.
Correct.
That's what they're looking for. They're looking for someone that says, boy, I hate my parents. I want to run away from home. So don't exploit your feelings and your emotions. Teens should not be exploiting their feelings and emotions about their vulnerabilities on social media, because unlike we think, well, it can be erased. No, it can't.
No, it cannot.
It's there. And if you're posting pictures of yourself, it's there. Don't think those can be erased. They're out. And guess who's looking for them? Somebody who goes, oh, here's a girl who thinks she's got something about herself that others could be looking at, and she seems vulnerable, and I'm going to reach out to her. So they are masterful at deception, and they will reach them online oftentimes before meeting in person. They can get them, reach out online, trick them into meeting them. That's when the trouble starts. I hope that answered your question. They just need to be aware that it's out there, it's happening, and it's oftentimes right under our noses. And they just need to know the warning signs and then protect themselves. Absolutely. Do not say stupid things on Facebook. Mm-hmm. If you want to share your mom's meatloaf recipe, that's one thing. But
yeah, knock yourself out, right?
Right. But don't be telling the world, I'm lonely. Oh, you're lonely.
I just need love.
Yeah. Or, boy, I'm low on cash. I really wish I could afford blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's what they're looking for. It's very masterful how they do this. So then it'll go into, if they can meet you person to person, they will find ways to psychologically manipulate you.
Because you're vulnerable?
Oh, well, yeah, you said you needed this. Let me help you with that.
Right.
I'm so sorry you're struggling with your parents. Man, I did too. You know what? Let's just go out and have a nice time and forget our worries, and let's go have some fun. Mm-hmm. And, little by little, he gains her trust. Oh, he loves me. He's interested in me. He wants to be my boyfriend or whatever. And he will manipulate her to feel trapped, powerless, and feel bad for him. There's a psychological thing that happens, and we've dealt with it, where the victims see their pimps as their lovers, like they really do love them, and they don't. They don't. That's not love. Come on.
Not at all. Not at all.
No.
And so then what can parents do to keep their children safe from this lifestyle?
Be nosy. Don't be a friend. Be a parent. I mean, I always told my kids, if you're guilty, you have no defense. If you're not guilty, you don't need one.
Oh,
so
like that.
If a child is raising up all kinds of defenses, there's probably something that you need to be looking into here. If they do not want you looking at their Facebook, if they do not want you looking at their texts, if they do not want you questioning where they were past 10 o'clock or past their curfew, or if they're starting to lie and be deceptive, a parent nowadays cannot be the buddy, cannot be the friend. You have to be a parent. And nowadays, we need strong parents to raise strong children. So they'll raise strong children, I wanted to circle back really quick about the photos and suggestive videos that teens, who doesn't want to feel proud of themselves? And what is Facebook but an avenue to put out your best side, right?
Sure.
Oh, my selfie. Oh, this. Oh, how do I look in this outfit? And boy, I tell you what, they are suggestive and almost pornographic, some of the pictures that the girls will put of themselves. And then the pimp is all over that. And then he will find ways to convince them to use those for sexual services online and make some money.
And this is exactly what could be happening in the letter, because the young lady had already taken nudes and sent to this guy. And he's now promising her this immaculate, amazing, luxurious lifestyle.
Yeah. Absolutely. And he has no thought in his mind to take care of her and love her and protect her and honor her and cherish her. He will use her and abuse her and turn her out and make her the next victim that will put in an application to come into our home and need psychological, mental, emotional retraining the brain. I mean, if we could stop those pimps, and if we could raise up strong children to heed these warning signs and be on the lookout for their friends, you could put us out of business. Put us out of business. Put the safe houses out of business. I mean, let's get the kids while they're teens so that when they're 20 and 30 and 40, they're not still being trafficked. And it doesn't get better, it gets worse. The trauma bonding and what it does to a woman who has been doing this. We had someone in our home who was 14 years being trafficked when she was rescued. And, it won't be 9 to 12 months for her. It'll be probably years of just getting help, but she's getting it. And that's the good thing.
That is a good thing. So I could talk to you for hours, and I'm also mindful of the wonderful information that you have shared with the listeners so far. So before we wind down for today, can you share with us any kernel of truth or nugget of wisdom that can offer additional information to the panicked parent or just parents in general who are listening to today's episode?
Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a woman of faith. I do believe in getting on your knees and crying out to God.
I know that's right. Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. If a person's not into that, I understand. They need to seek counsel and help from a good source, a good counselor. There's great places here, even where I live here in Las Vegas, that can help counsel parents through these situations, know the warning signs of human trafficking, and counsel that parent with some next steps. Local churches, there's great local churches that have fabulous youth workers and youth groups that try to ground youth with good, solid, here's how you should feel and think about yourself, not the way the world thinks about you, or you have value, you have worth. So train up strong kids, put Refuge for Women out of business, and know the warning signs. Parents need to, shout this one from the rooftops with their kids. Have family meals together, spend time together where you have natural learning opportunities to talk to your kids. If you're not in that mode, start that mode. Go out with your daughter, get pedicures, get manicures, go on dates. Mm-hmm. Take time with your teen so that you can develop trust. And when you develop trust, that teen is a little more eager to hear from you if you see things, because they're struggling too. They're trying to find ways to be loved and attractive and wanted and valued and feel secure. And so parents just need to get their acts together and start loving their kids and building trust with them so that they can speak into their lives and know the warning signs.
Beautifully stated. Wonderful advice. Excellent kernels of truth and wisdom. Karen Diers, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I will be sure to share the information for the listeners to get in touch with the Refuge for Women so they can learn more about your wonderful organization, what you all are doing to help the women in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
It's been my honor. Thank you so much.
I want to extend an abundant amount of appreciation to Karen, her team, and all of the organizations that collaborate with Refuge for Women for their work in assisting women that have experienced unspeakable trauma associated with commercial sexual exploitation. With their efforts and their support, the women who are survivors of commercial sexual exploitation are able to skillfully attend to their journey of healing by receiving their support and the invaluable tools that will allow them to create a life of stability. To learn more about Refuge for Women, please go to their website at rfwlasvegas.org. And while you are online, please check out my website at myhoneybeetherapy.com. Feel free to write me with your questions or ideas that you may have for the show. And as always, feel free to leave any feedback that you may have for me about the show in general. So long as it is respectful and constructive, I am here for it. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Until next time, peace.